Hello, everybody. Today we have a very special guest on the podcast, and her name is Catherine Engel, and she has a very niche business that helps real estate investors in something that I see a lot of real estate investors failing at, including myself when I started. I didn't realize how crucial it was to have this big piece of the puzzle until I got in trouble. And then I had to backtrack and say, I need to really focus on that. So I would like to introduce you, Catherine, and I will have her tell you a little bit more about herself and also what she does to help real estate investors. Go ahead, Catherine.
Hi. Yeah. Hi, Laura. Thank you for having me. So a little bit about myself. I am a young entrepreneur at this time right now. I have a little bit of background in real estate. I got my license very young as an agent, thinking that I was going to use that, and that was kind of the only pathway I saw for real estate at that time. I wasn't familiar with the investing space or any like creative financing or anything like that. Just the traditional like listing a house, selling a house, that kind of thing was what I had in my mind. And after trying to pursue that for almost a year, I wasn't finding success in that. And it was quite the struggle. I had moved to a completely different market and didn't know anything about it. So I stepped back out of the real estate space for a while. And then about 2 years ago, I was reintroduced to it. I was working as an assistant pretty much for a real estate investment company in my area. And they were doing fix and flips and buy and holds and a little bit of creative finance deals. So I was kind of organizing and coordinating all of that. I was a transaction coordinator, and I was also keeping the books and the accounting for that company. So then from there, I actually had two other investors approach me about doing their books for them for their real estate investment company, just to stay organized. And everybody's had that moment where it's the end of the year or it's tax filing season and their CPA is like, what the heck is all of this? Um, so it was kind of like an aha moment of like, okay, I need somebody to handle this throughout the year and hand it off to my CPA at the end. So that's where the business that I'm running now, the REI Bookkeepers, comes into play. Is I was doing the books for multiple investors and just decided to create the business out of it because I was seeing just like a significant need in this market, and eventually will branch out of Arizona and multiple other states in the US as well. So that's what I'm doing right now, is bookkeeping specifically for real estate investors. And like you had mentioned, right, a lot of people just don't realize that they need it until they do get in trouble. So we're trying to bridge that gap and just be the middleman between like an investor that's just doing deals and fully encompassed in the business side, and a CPA that just kind of takes everything and will handle the year end stuff. So
Right. And that's the thing, I was joking with you earlier and saying, when you have one or two deals, of course, you can keep track of that. You know those deals so well. But trust me, soon enough, everything will become a blur when you start having 5, 10 deals, and you have to keep track. Like you also said that when you work for the other investment company, you were also a transaction coordinator. And for everybody who doesn't know what the transaction coordinator is, once an investor puts a deal under contract, and then you go take it to closing, there's all these steps that have to go in between. And you need to really respect those steps and those dates because you have these deadlines, you have this contingency, you have to get documents signed back and forth. So, to have a step-by-step process is important. For the same token that for bookkeeping reasons, if you go down once a year to a CPA and you give him 2 or 3 properties, one thing, but when you start having 20 or 30, 100 properties or more in a year, and you're trying to keep everything in a shoebox like I did, and then you go to the CPA and say, here, this is my shoebox full of stuff, is really going to be hard. Plus, you also need, as you evolve into the business, you need to have your financials. So when you go approach private lenders for money, when you go approach even regular banks, the first thing they ask you is, what is your financial? What's your profit and loss statement? What is your balance sheet? And then you have to try to come up with that. So, it's kind of getting things pre-paved and get your business to a good start. And this should be part of your strategy, because real estate is all about making money, right? So you really need to account for the money. So that's great. So how can a bookkeeper then, because a lot of people might not think of this until today, until we have this podcast, but how can a bookkeeper help an investor to make more money even?
Yeah, absolutely. So just in previous experiences I've had and clients that I have now is a lot of people are kind of just going by their gut feeling, which will get you pretty far, obviously, in being able to make money and just growing a real estate investment company. But then you'll kind of plateau after that, right? Like you'll maybe not know, like, how can I tweak my underwriting for my fix and flip deals so that I create more profit at the end? Or when I'm doing a buy and hold deal, like, is it smart to maybe do the Burr method and refinance and get all the money back out of it and hold that property? And so with those type of decisions that a bookkeeper would be able to help an investor make, it's just so beneficial to be able to look at your financials, like you said, your profit and loss and your balance sheet are the main two reports that kind of give you what's going on in your business at any given time, right? So if I am able to look at those on, let's just say, like a monthly basis, right? I have like 30-day benchmarks where I can decide, is this working or is it not working? And if it's not, like, how do I make a change or tweak a few things in my business so that it can become more profitable? And I think
Right.
that's really important for an investor to be able to have that, like, okay, let's just like take a step back and look at the big picture and see like if something is beneficial or if it's just kind of sucking money out of the business.
Right. Yeah, numbers don't lie, right? And so the thing is, look at the numbers at the end of the day. Even with real estate, I don't listen to people's opinion. I look at the numbers. Is this a good area? Okay, what do the numbers say? What is the supply, the demand, the sales? What is the trends? So I look at the numbers before I make a decision. And the same thing with the business, right? Where should you put more of your money into? As far as, when you are looking into how much money you spend in marketing versus how much profits you bring in, okay, do more of what works. And
Right.
so to keep track of that, that's why bookkeeping comes into place, because like I said, you want to focus your money into things that do bring you the highest yield. And one of the things about women that is actually good, you mentioned something about gut feeling. I look at the numbers, and then obviously you partner that with your gut feeling. And therefore, to me, I put the two together and then I proceed and I feel very secure in my decisions. And doing it this way, knock on wood, I've never done really a bad mistake with real estate. I never really lost money.
Good.
Because
Awesome.
I partner my gut feeling with a solid financial strategy. And look at the numbers, they don't lie. So definitely. So a lot of you right now listening to this podcast are saying, okay, I never even thought about hiring a bookkeeper. But what questions should you ask when you're looking for a bookkeeper? Because one of the things I also want to make clear that, when you hire anybody, a CPA, bookkeeper, you want somebody that's knowledgeable with real estate. And it's not necessarily true. I had a CPA that was very well known, had a ton of businesses. And for years, he reported me something's wrong on my tax return, which triggered an audit. And so he wasn't using the right schedule. So you need to have a CPA that knows what they're doing. For the same token, the bookkeepers are not CPA, but they prepare the information to give to the CPA. Now, what should investor ask a bookkeeper that they consider working with?
Yeah, absolutely. Like with anything, and I learned this kind of the hard way almost through being a real estate agent, is just like shop around and interview people to work with you almost, because you obviously don't know what they have to bring to the table and shouldn't agree to anything really just on a whim, right? So, um, questions that I would expect to be asked and would be almost like delighted that somebody is willing to like be upfront with those questions is like what kind of reports am I going to get and how often, right? Or like if they're looking for something specific, like I have one client that's a wholesaling client, and he does like his own cost per deal calculations. So we structured his reports to show like specifically how much he spends on each marketing channel, so that he can kind of calculate that, okay, I brought in this much money from this marketing channel, but I spent this much. So here's my cost per deal. Right. So like that's something he wanted to specifically know for his business. So we worked with him on that. Um, and just kind of like, are you willing to work with me on like customizing or catering to what I'm looking for in my financials, right?
Right.
um, because ultimately like a bookkeeper is there to provide insight for a real estate investor, also like keep everything straight and not get audited or things like that. But on the day-to-day basis, right, they're turning to you to know kind of like or at least get the information of what's working and what's not. So I would say ask like if they're willing to work with you on a few specific things, what kind of reports they're going to get, um, what knowledge they have had in real estate already. Like myself and my partner invest in real estate. So we have fix and flips going, and we have done wholesale deals, and we know creative finance subject to deals, and the BRRRR strategy for refinancing out and everything like that. So if you're not able to pick those certain words out of their conversation with you, then maybe that might trigger like a little bit of a worry that they're not well informed in what's going on in the industry. Like creative finances, it has taken off like so greatly in the past couple of years, right? Like seller finance was the biggest one, but now there's a plethora more of strategies that people can use. So if you're not familiar with that and you're not familiar how to track that on the bookkeeping side, it could get really messy really fast. So,
Right. And that's so
um,
important that, somebody that understands the business, right? Because if
sure,
you go to a regular bookkeeper and you said, I want to really see how effective is the BRRRR method, they're going to think,
right.
you're just cold, maybe BRRRR, right? You're just shivering. And that's why you say that. No, you want to track the BRRRR method, which is, buy, rehab, rent, refinance, and repeat. So, to work with somebody that is knowledgeable and knows the terminology and knows, and like you say, you work with different investors. And that's the thing also. Maybe, you see that for that wholesaler, the way he tracks his expenses in the business, you say, okay, I can do that for our wholesalers. You work with them. So you see what works best. And also you can also improve the system, where a regular bookkeeper, they don't know that, right? That to them is all foreign. So that's
Yeah,
really, really important to work with somebody that knows what you're talking about
yeah,
and that has a
absolutely.
personal interest, because both you and Matt, are also real estate investors. So you're out there in the field walking the talk, as they say.
Absolutely. Yeah. And also, I would say asking somebody like if they're keeping up on like different law changes and things like that as well, because I know here in Arizona, like wholesaling is legal, but I'm pretty sure in other states it's not.
Right.
So just keeping up with the current news on all of that and like what is legal and what's able to be written off and things like that. Not so much that we're doing that, but to be able to have that knowledge and turn to that investor's CPA and say, hey, here's all the things that we categorize this way so
Right,
that they can reduce their tax bill, like that is tenfold like beneficial
right.
for a bookkeeper to have that knowledge just in the back of their brain for that.
Right, no, definitely. And the thing is, it's like, because every state handles wholesaling different, so there's only one state right now as of this recording that requires to be licensed, which is Illinois. The other states, some of them you can do double closing, and some of them you can do only assignments. And so there are different ways of handling each one of these deals if you're wholesaling. So to be able to know what states are doing and what you should be, and obviously work with somebody that can be in tune with that, it's going to save you
Absolutely.
a lot of problems, a lot of problems. Great. So share with me, you're working with investors firsthand as a bookkeeper as well as an investor, but share with me what you see out there between you and Matt and also investors you work with that you say, what tips can you give somebody that is really starting out in real estate?
Sure. Starting out in real estate, if somebody hasn't done any flips or buy and holds or anything like that, one thing that I learned when I was first getting into real estate is work towards capital first. So obviously, like fixing and flipping real estate property takes a lot of money, right? You have to purchase it, you have to do the rehab, you have holding costs, all of that associated with it, and then sell it and hopefully make a big profit at the end, right? But if you don't have all that money and you don't have the reputation for somebody to be able to lend to you and feel comfortable with that, wholesaling was always like seemingly the easiest way to create capital to get into real estate. Um, but even with that, like when I first started and was wholesaling, I made all the rookie mistakes and I didn't know how to underwrite deals correctly. So when I was sending those deals to investors, it was almost like this person doesn't know what they're talking about. Like it's not worth it for me to look at the deals that they send me because I was super uninformed and I was just thinking deals were deals when they weren't.
Right.
Um, so I would definitely like, not so much that you have to go spend like $100,000 on training or anything, right? But definitely do your homework or maybe get a coach or a trainer or somebody that's worth the investment to show you the ropes of, hey, this is what, and after like how you find the ARV of a property or um, how you estimate rehab costs, like per square foot and things like that, right? So
Right.
just knowing your market really well. And that only comes with experience and just underwriting deals over and over and over again. Um, and even like talking, if you're, one big thing in wholesaling is if you're talking with your cash buyers or your investors, right, is being very transparent with them and asking them, what are you looking for? Like, I really want specifics so that I'm not wasting your time, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it's really just a hustle, right? It's not like you can just spend money on the training and you're closing deals and becoming wealthy and just like building this generational wealth, right? It's definitely like, all right, I'm gonna go knock doors and I'm gonna get 1,000 no's before I get one yes, right? So you've really got to have the heart into it and um just like the reason that you're getting into real estate has to be very strong for you to be able to like hold in your willpower and just keep on going with that.
Yeah.
Um, the other thing I would say, if that's not a route that sounds appealing to you, right, is just like hustling it out until something clicks, is go work for a company, which is what I did. A company that was already like had the financial means to be doing multiple flips at a time and had the reputation to um, just work with wholesalers and cut deals with people to get properties. Um, because I pretty much worked for that company and was also learning. So
Right.
it was like going to school and getting paid to do it, right? So I was in a very fortunate situation where I was learning on the job and just kind of like making sure everything was happening correctly. But if something went wrong, then I had somebody to turn to ask.
Right.
So
Yeah.
definitely a
And
mentor.
then, yeah. And that brings me to the next question, now that you have some experience and you have worked with investors who, and you are not too long ago, you were a beginner investor, but working with more established investors, what do you
Right.
see some of the mistakes that they've made that you say, you know what, as I advance in my real estate investing career, I'm not going to do that? Obviously, you already put yourself in the right position. I started too as an agent, and honestly, that was kind of good in a way because I learned a lot of the terminology and I learned a lot of the do's and don'ts of the business, the legalities. But you don't have to do that as an investor. You can obviously learn about it. But what are some of the other mistakes you've seen more established investors are making?
Yeah, super good question. One of the biggest things that I have seen is obviously people can track receipts, right, and put them in a shoebox or whatever they do with them, right? But paying for things personally themselves out of a personal bank account and just kind of like mixing funds in that way, because then it really gets thrown off track. You don't know. Um, because really you're trying to keep yourself and your entity separate. And when you start paying for things out of your personal bank account and not tracking it in a software or something like that as your contribution as the owner of that company, it kind of gets all mixed together. And um, then it's almost like, oh, but my own company owes me money, or like I owe my company money, and that gets really confusing. um it's really hard to like get back on track after that. So
Yeah.
mixing funds in that way and not having like an established line, like, okay, I'm going to transfer from this bank account to this bank account, um is it just gets really messy really quick.
Yeah, and that brings actually another bigger issues, which is piercing the corporate veil.
Right.
Because in real estate, I don't want to scare anybody, but if you're in real estate long enough, like been in it for over 30 years, especially if you get into rentals, sometimes lawsuits happen. I got sued by
Absolutely.
tenants for a couple of times because of one of them fell off a second floor balcony.
Oh my
Another
goodness.
one purchased a property, was a fix and flip, and found bats in the attic, and they sued us for that. But anyway, so and none of these lawsuits went anywhere. However, they look at
It
your financial,
happens.
they look how you run your business, they look at how you think, and piercing the corporate veil is something I've seen a lot with real estate investors, where they thought that, oh, yeah, I have an LLC or a corporation, I'm fine. But then when they look back and they say they were looking at their bank statement, and they were paying their mortgage out of the account for the business that
Yeah.
pierced the corporate veil. And then their
Just open
immunity,
themselves up.
right,
Yep.
their immunity went away, and then they were the personally exposed to the liability of the lawsuit. So the point that you brought about not commingling funds and really keeping separate is so, so important. And a lot of people make that mistake. Get your business card, whatever you want, an American Express or a Visa, just for the business. They have business and personal. I have two of them of everything. You want different bank accounts, just for the business. Be very, very careful. I mean, you can pay yourself out to the business account, but then you pay your bills out of that, and the same thing, the money goes into the business, pay the bills out of that. It'd be very
Yeah,
important. And another thing you don't learn until you get in trouble. Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, so that's one of the biggest things I have seen. Um, and then one other thing I would say is just like lack of knowledge, really. And that's just kind of like where we're trying to bridge the gap is somebody, let's just say in wholesaling, for example, is just throwing money at marketing and not like tracking any kind of cost per deal or like monthly um like marketing expense for per channel, that kind of thing. Like it gets really expensive really fast,
Right.
where you could, let's just say, be throwing $20,000 at cold calling and SMS texting or something like that, right? and only closing maybe 1 or 2 deals in 3 months. And it's like, okay, but those 1 or 2 deals might have only been like a $10,000 or a $5,000 rip, and then it's not really worth it anymore, right? Like you're just
Right.
spending more than you're actually bringing in. Um, so,
Yeah.
but without being able to see that or tracking that, right, then the cycle just continues, and you're just like throwing more and more money at the wall and hoping that something sticks, right?
And I see
Um,
a lot of investors doing that.
yeah.
Yeah.
So just yeah, just tracking it, and honestly, like that's one thing we're really here to do, is just being able to look at some financials or even provide them to them and say, hey, like this, it doesn't seem like it's working for you. Like you should probably pivot or change direction in how you're approaching your marketing, or um like maybe the company that you're working with for your texting platform or something like that, right? Like just any business decision that needs to be made, it can't really be made without the proper information. So
Definitely.
yeah.
Yeah, no, it's so crucial, that you start, even if you're doing the first deal for now, just keep track of it. Just keep track of the expenses, and I always use what rule of thumbs. So like, I know that for every deal, I don't want to spend a lot in market. Honestly, I'm one of those marketers that spend very little about real estate, because the most effective way are actually the cheaper or the free ways. So that's another topic. But the thing
Absolutely.
is, I've never been one of throwing a lot of money in marketing
Yeah.
into real estate, because honestly, you don't have to, and so be careful with that. Keep track of it and see where you stand with the business, before you throw more money into it. And
Yeah.
now, what are some of the tools or books or podcasts that really you can say made a difference in the way you look at the business, in the way that, because you're very young, and, I commend you for doing that, because for what you're doing, because to be out there and starting your own business and being in real estate, especially at a young age. I was 23 when I started, so I understand, but a lot of people don't take that step until they're older. So what helped you to really get into the mindset and shift and being your own business owner?
Yeah, for sure. I love this question. This is a good question. um Yeah, I listened to books a lot. I listen to a few podcasts, but mostly audiobooks, like when I'm driving or things like that.
Mhm.
Um one of the biggest things for me is just being scared or afraid that like you don't have all the knowledge or anything like that, right? And it took me a long time to realize that nobody knows everything and everybody's just kind of going through it and learning as they go, because there's no other way.
Right.
Um, so for me, actually, The Millionaire Next Door was a really good book that I had read that helped me a lot. And then um, one book that I preach to everybody is How to Win Friends and Influence People. I love this book because in real estate and really any industry, right, it's all about your relationships with people. And
Right.
so just being able to have that connection with someone will get you further than any kind of schmoozing or sales tactic that you have, right? Um, so for like sellers, or I'm sorry, not sellers, for investors, like trying to work with sellers, like being able to connect with someone on an empathetic level of whatever they're going through, right? You're trying to help them out of this problem. Um, that will get you way further than somebody that can just give them like a lump of cash, right? Like they'll go with somebody that they trust before like somebody that just has a lot of money. So
Yeah,
um
I always say that in real estate, you need a psychology degree more than a real estate license.
absolutely. Yeah.
Because,
Um
to understand what is going to make seller respond a certain way. And that's why I'm personally a big advocate of saying, be yourself, don't worry. People ask me all the time, what scripts do you have, and I don't like scripts.
yeah.
I just have conversations. I just actually genuinely get into the conversation with these sellers, and that's why I'm able to get these sellers on board all the time, just by having a conversation. What is, what are they trying to do? What do they want? What are they looking at? What is really their motivation behind it? And how can I help them, making a win-win situation, and telling them, I'm making, I'm obviously I need to make some money. I'm not
Right.
really moving into the house, and this is an investment, but how can I help you? And we can both win, And so having this conversation instead of just worrying about it and understanding really the psychology. So yeah, that's a really good way to look at it too, to really read books and get more information about how to deal with people more than just the strategies themselves. So
Yeah, for sure. I
yeah.
think two other ones that I think are super beneficial, and I think this audience on this podcast is primarily women. And I think we've all gone through our fair share of hard times. So one book that I actually really enjoyed reading, not involving real estate at all, but was a book by Rachel Hollis, which is Girl Wash Your Face.
I
And
read that book, yeah.
and she has a second one, Girl Stop Apologizing.
Right. I read both of them, yeah.
Yeah. So if you're listening to this podcast, I highly, highly encourage you to read both of those. Everybody obviously goes through their hard stuff, and Rachel Hollis is just a rock star in the way that she just encourages and uplifts people. That's her whole business, pretty much, is a business for encouraging women. And I thoroughly enjoyed listening to her books. And I think I also purchased a hard copy of Girl Wash Your Face so that I could go through and highlight and underline and all that kind of stuff. But that one was just phenomenal. And then I'm currently listening to a book by Chris Voss, who is an FBI negotiator, or used to be a hostage negotiator. And it's also about psychology and just the way that human beings operate and their emotional thought process, and how most decisions are made emotionally, not logically. So if you're trying to work with someone or persuade someone to get something that you want out of the relationship, you'll have to kind of like tap into that emotional side and not come at it from a logical angle, because that's not how they're going to decide whether they help you or not, right? So
right. Like again, we go more into psychology than anything else, right?
Absolutely.
But that's really what is going to make people, respond to you even as an investor. So it's definitely very important. Great. So how can people reach out to you to learn more about how you can help them with the bookkeeping and give them really, important things? And I know you guys set up with this amazing business as bookkeepers, and you're actually really, really affordable from what I've heard. So, it's not an excuse not to get this set up right from the start. But how can people reach out to you?
Yeah, to contact us, you can either reach out to me, or I have a business partner. His name is Matthew. On just our website is the reibookkeepers.com. And then we also have across all platforms, it's at the REI Bookkeepers. So we're on Instagram and Facebook mainly, but we also have a LinkedIn account. And then my Instagram handle, I believe, is cat _Rochelle. Or my phone number is 928-716-6375. So you can call me or text me on that number. And my email is my full name, Catherine, CATHERINE at the reibookkeepers.com. So any one of those, like, we're all over everything. So if anybody wants to reach out anyway, we'll see your message and we'll get back to you definitely as soon as we can. But yeah, we just want all the clients that we have to do super well. We're super excited when people can scale up and we can actually like grow what we're doing for them as their company grows. So it's always like a good day when they're like, okay, we need to do a little bit more because I'm doing more in my business side. So that's always like super exciting, and it's just awesome. We have the best clients. So
great. Well, and that goes back into attracting the right people, which is something in the business that I always believe in it. So great. Well, thanks a lot, Catherine, for taking the time here in this podcast today. Hopefully, everybody feel that you got a lot. I know I always like to listen to podcasts, even if for things that are not really 100% real estate, but they're like collaborating businesses within real estate that you might not have thought of, this is when people think, oh, I need to be more established before I look for a bookkeeper, which is not true, as we talked about during this interview. So great again for having you here. Thanks for taking this time. And for anybody, please reach out to them. I'm sure they'll be open to help you if you have any questions and help you to get the business set up on the right. It doesn't matter if you're wholesaling, fix and flip, and buy and hold. You definitely need to get your business set up properly if you want to be in the business for a long time. Great. Thanks again, and take care, everybody.
Awesome. Thank you, Laura.